few months ago, I heard a story which impacted me deeply. It was a story about a man named Carl. In 2003, Carl traveled to Cambodia to attend a conference on global sex trafficking. And at that conference, one of the speakers told of a 12-year-old girl named Nu. And Nu had been sold into the sex trade by her own grandmother. And when Carl came back to the States, his heart was completely shattered and broken when he thought of Nu being raped up to 15 times every single day. And Carl made a commitment that he would never stop until he put a dent in the sex trade, as well as until he found Nu. So he spent the next few years going back and forth from the United States to Cambodia, searching for this little girl. And after 6 unsuccessful trips, in 2006, Carl finally found Nu at 17 years old and rescued her from the sex trade. And at 17, Nu joined Carl and his wife Lori and the nonprofit Remember Nu that they started. She's now helped them start over 34 children's homes in 9 countries all around the world, saving 700 kids like herself from the sex trade. And they're just getting started. Not only that, but Nu has now also found her own joy, peace, and happiness, and is happily engaged to her soon-to-be future husband. What an incredible transformational story. There's 2 primary lessons from Carl and Nu's story that I want to talk about today. The first lesson is how deeply one human being can impact another. And this one's personal for me. Because when I was 20 years old, my somewhat cush and completely happy life got flipped upside down on me. My mom and stepdad ended up getting divorced, which was the 3rd divorce I'd gone through up to that point in my life. I found out my dad was struggling with a severe addiction to meth. And a girl who I believed was my soulmate at the time died in a tragic car accident. I went through a long period of deep darkness and depression. I had to drop out of college for a term. I almost lost my job. I almost lost my life in general. And I don't know that I would be standing here today if it wasn't for this man who came into my life in that period. He came in as a coach, a mentor, a supervisor. He was somebody who believed in me in a way nobody ever had before. He spoke confidence and courage into me. He challenged me to be a leader. He challenged me to bring my best self to the table every single day. He bought me books and took me to conferences. He challenged me to get my master's in business. He encouraged me to start a nonprofit that has been empowering kids both locally and in Haiti for the last 10 years. He challenged me to start my own company, to coach 15 to 25-year-olds from the prison system to public schools to private schools, to try to be what he was to me to those kids. Troy changed my life forever. Not only did he help me with my career track, but Troy helped bring emotional healing to me in desperately needed areas. For 3 years, I didn't date anybody. I didn't plan on getting married or having kids anymore. But after 3 years of working with Troy and his coaching and guidance, I was able to heal and be open to a relationship, which now has led me to a happy marriage with my wife, Stephanie, my 4-year-old daughter, Lucy, and our 3-year-old son, Josh, with baby number 3 on the way. And thanks to Troy, on top of that, I get to experience crying and screaming and diapers and everything that comes along with it. More stress than I ever could have imagined. Thank you, Troy. But as every parent knows, I also get to experience moments like this, moments that make every single second of it worth it. And that's not all Troy gave me. Troy gave me a connection to my deepest passion and my core driver as a human being. Troy helped me realize what matters to me most and that nothing frustrates me more than wasted human potential. A year after Kate's death in the car accident, I was reading obituaries, and I found an obituary that touched my heart of a 22-year-old young man who had been in and out of 30 foster homes. And all the suffering he'd experienced finally caught up to him, and he decided to take his own life. And there was something about his smile, something about the potential you could see in this human being that you and me are all worse off because this person doesn't exist in the world today. And it broke my heart and inspired me because in it, his parents said our hearts are forever broken. And that broke my heart, and it challenged me to go on a 10-year journey, working with 15 to 25-year-olds to try to coach, supervise, and mentor them. And through that process, working with the millennial generation and Generation Z, a powerful lesson that I believe Carl represents in the second lesson with him and Nu came to me that I think is an idea worth sharing with you all today. And that lesson is that when you combine 2 elements, certain elements when combined have an exponential transformational impact on the world that in and of themselves they wouldn't have. Look at the right combination of hydrogen and oxygen creates water, a transformational, life-giving source all over the world. Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen create 6 NBA championships. Steve Jobs and Wozniak create the most valuable, transformational company in history. And the list goes on and on and on. But I believe that the characteristics that Carl represents are the ability to dream big and the willingness to act small. Dreaming big, like JFK declaring we're going to land on the moon by the end of the 60s. Dreaming big like Nelson Mandela, spending 27 years in a prison cell, dreaming of ending apartheid and racial segregation in South Africa, and then going on to do it. Acting small like Steph Curry, shooting 250 shots every single day to maximize his human potential to become one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. Acting small like J.K. Rowling, being rejected 12 times, not 6, 12 times, and still having the perseverance and grit and willingness to pursue her publishing of Harry Potter, which my wife is incredibly happy as a huge fan of hers. She then went on to become the first female billionaire author of all time, changing kids' lives all over the world. Dreaming big like Carl, believing he could put a dent in the sex trade. Dreaming big like Carl, believing he could find one little girl in an entire country. And acting small, like going back to that same country 6 times, leaving the comfort of your home with no results and continuing to do it until he found success. Dreaming big and acting small. And our world is in desperate need of a new generation to rise up with these 2 characteristics. A new generation of heroes and leaders. There's 27 million people stuck in slavery today, 80% of which are in the sex trade. And the average person in that is a 13-year-old girl. There's 663 million people without access to clean drinking water. And there's problem after problem after problem. But I'm not here to preach a message of despair and lack of hope, because there is a great deal of hope. There's amazing organizations all over the world like Charity Water fighting the clean water crisis, International Justice Mission, and Remember New fighting sex trafficking. But we need more. We need to become a generation, not just the millennial and Generation Z, we need to become the hero generation. A generation categorized and classified by being on mission and purpose-driven. A generation that doesn't think sharing a Facebook post or a tweet is enough anymore. A generation that becomes more. And we can't do that without dreaming big and simultaneously acting small. So let's talk about dreaming big a little bit. This is what our nation was built on. Our founding fathers like Rockefeller and the Fords of the world. Our giants of social justice like Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. Our modern day heroes like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. Elon Musk, I believe, is the poster child for dreaming big. There's 3 elements to dreaming. There's belief in yourself, belief in what's possible, and belief in others around you. Elon Musk, I believe, is the poster child for believing in what's possible. And early in his career, Elon Musk co-founded PayPal. When they sold PayPal, he made $165 million personally. He could have retired on the beaches and pulled himself out of the game. But instead, he invested $100 million to create the company SpaceX, because Elon Musk believed that NASA wasn't doing a good enough job of developing technology for space exploration, and he thought he could do it better. Who thinks they can do better than NASA? That's dreaming big. And in 2008, NASA came to him and said, "You're right," and they gave him $1.6 billion because his technology was better than theirs. And then he went on to fund Tesla because that wasn't enough. And so he's trying to eliminate our reliance on gas-guzzling cars. And then he decided that he thinks we can colonize Mars, right? The moon wasn't big enough. He thinks we can colonize Mars, and by 2040, he's predicted that 80,000 people will be living on Mars. And most people think he's crazy, but they keep thinking he's crazy, and he keeps proving them wrong. One of the #1 things I want to pass down to my kids is the belief that anything's possible, that they can do and become and give back to the world in powerful ways. I get to go on dates with my daughter every once in a while. This is us on a hot chocolate date. We're big dreamers together. We have big aspirations. We talk about walking on the moon together someday. And she wants to walk on the moon so bad. And I desperately want to give her that dream. And that may sound somewhat crazy, but 50 years ago, it would have been crazy that you'd have a computer in your pocket that was more powerful than the computer that we use to man the moon mission. And I know that when we're walking on the moon together, that she would pass on to her children and her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren the belief that anything is possible. The second aspect of belief is belief in others. I think people are walking around longing for us to call forth gold in them, to see their absolute best self. And then they'll rise up to that challenge. That's what Troy was for me. That's what Troy brought out in me. My younger brother recently had an opportunity to be in the movie Wild with Reese Witherspoon, which was for him a massive dream because his ultimate dream is to become a feature film director and an Oscar winner. And so for his birthday, I got him this Oscar trophy, and it says, "I promise" on it. Because I'm telling him that he will absolutely achieve that dream because I know his talent, but I know his willingness to do whatever it takes to achieve it. And I wanted to be what Troy was to me to him. Because when you believe in people, they rise to the challenge. And the last aspect of belief is belief in yourself. Because you have to remember that you are gifted with unique God-given gifts and abilities and a unique story that no one else in the world has. And when you combine them, they can and will change the world. But only if you have the willingness to act small, to do the little things. We grew up in the microwave generation, right? We're great at dreaming big naturally, but we suck at acting small, right? We don't do the little things, and the older people are nodding their heads. They know that, right? But we need to desperately break that and fix that. The microwave generation, where we play a video game for 1 or 2 hours and we beat a boss or we level up, and we get instant feedback and gratification. And then we go into the real world and instant feedback doesn't exist. And so we retreat back into ourselves from fear that we're not going to be enough. But we need to step out of that. We need to start acting small, doing the little things, acting small like never hitting the snooze button. Because it's the first thing you do in the morning that tells you whether you're somebody who does what you say you're going to do or whether you're not. I think it's the greatest metaphor for acting small there is. Acting small like writing thank you notes to people. Because most people aren't going to, and you should be doing it anyway, and it's the little things that will differentiate yourselves. Acting small, like actually planning out that dream of yours to the detail. I showed you this trophy I got my brother. He'd probably be upset that I'm showing you this next photo, but that's what older brothers are for, so he should be used to it by now. This is the photo he sent me 3 days after I gave him this trophy. This was his plan, detailed out, the year he's going to win his Oscar, and his actual steps of how he's planning on doing it. This is why I gave this to him. Because I knew he was somebody who was going to do the little things to get there. You have to live like that, guys. Acting small is absolutely critical. And if Elon Musk is the poster child for dreaming big, then John Wooden is the poster child for acting small. John Wooden was voted by ESPN as the greatest coach of all time in any sport in history. He won 10 national championships in 12 years at UCLA. 7 back-to-back titles. 88-game winning streak. Nobody's ever touched his records, not even close. But it's because he did the little things. 15 years he didn't win a title at UCLA. It took him 15 years to finally achieve breakthrough status before he won his first championship. Because the first thing he did for his players when they came on his team was he taught them how to put their socks on right so they wouldn't get blisters in the bottom of their feet so they would play to their peak performance. Every single practice, he had a 3x5 note card with everything they were going to do in that practice written down to the exact minute. And at the end of the season, he would review all those note cards to see how they can make next year better. And over time, that's why he became the greatest coach in history. And if John Wooden's the poster child for acting small and Elon Musk is the poster child for dreaming big, then Steve Jobs is the poster child for the merger of the two. Steve Jobs convinced us all that we can put a dent in the universe. He convinced us that the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do and the ones who will. But the thing oftentimes I think we forget about is the true legacy that Steve Jobs left with Apple was that the little things make a difference, that every single detail matters. And I can prove it to you. For those of you that have an iPhone, which is probably most of you, if you take out your iPhone and you flip up the bottom scroll console here, you'll find a little flashlight icon in the bottom left corner. And if you click that icon and turn the flashlight on, a little switch will flip up, just like a switch on a real flashlight. And if you turn it off, the switch will flip back down. And 99.9% of you probably didn't notice that before I just pointed it out. And you probably think that that doesn't make Apple worth over $500 billion today. And you're right, it doesn't. But when you do that little stuff 1,000 times over and over again, year after year, decade after decade, it absolutely is the reason that they are the company they are today. And if you want to look at Steve Jobs as an individual for it, Olympic athletes are the group that model it better than anybody else. They're striving to literally be the fastest human being on earth, jump higher than anybody else. Yet their little detail and practice and effort is greater than any of ours. right? They measure and track everything. They have coaches that push them beyond their limits every single day. If you want to be successful at the highest levels and impact the world at the highest levels, you have to train like the most successful people in the world. So I've been harping on the younger generation. I want to spend 1 minute on the older generation. That's right, old people, you're not off the hook fully. For those of you that have reached the golden status of retirement that we all strive for, and have maybe pulled yourself to the sidelines and are spending a little too much time golfing and month-long vacations and resorts, just think of someone like Elon Musk, who's worth $13 billion, could have been doing that all along, right? But he was unwilling to pull himself from the sidelines because you guys have reached a status where your depth of knowledge and wisdom is greater than it's ever been. Your network's larger than it's ever been. Your skills are better than they've ever been. Your character is more refined. And the younger generations in the world desperately needs you to put yourself back in the ring, to re-engage, to mentor and coach, and develop the younger generation to be able to change the world in the ways that they're capable of, to believe in their dreams and challenge them. So my final challenge to both old and young generation alike is to dream big dreams, to believe those dreams are possible, and to take action on them every single day. Or as Andy Dufresne famously says in Shawshank Redemption, get busy living or get busy dying, because the world needs you now more than ever. Thank you.